Good morning. For the record, it's April the 15th, 2025, about 11:22 in the morning, Eastern Time. For the record, this is YHWH-YAHWEH. So, figured we should have taken a little break from doing the videos for a while and let everyone catch up, but I want to do a teaching today, so a good one is going to be in relation to the bees. Of course, that's been my focus lately, trying to safely remove them from a wall and into a proper beehive. So, and this is very much parallel to how humanity operates. So the wall is no longer an option. Those bees have been given the eviction notice, but they do not understand that, right? They understand that the wall was their safety. It was their food. It was their breeding ground. It was their safety from the weather. There's nothing bad any bee could ever say about the wall. But if you were to look at it from the human perspective, well, there's a lot wrong with having bees in the wall. Of course, it can destroy the infrastructure of the wall. The honey could sour and start seeping into the inside of the house. It attracts other pests. And generally speaking, for people that don't understand bees or can't be around them right, maybe they're allergic or something, it's not safe for them to be around the bee. So, two sides of the same situation, right, but looked at very different, much like most problems in a human society. If you look at it one way, well, if a man turns into a girl, maybe they should be able to play women's sports. No, that's stupid, right? See, that's not a bee situation. That's not this situation. That's demonic ignorance. That is trying to drag the human species down further, so the same people that are touting this bullshit can then oppress you more through their beast system. So, back to the bee. I would have done this with a video outside, but I'm having an issue with draining the battery. Last time I took it off the computer, the battery totally goes to zero in just minutes. So it's supposed to be like 4 hours. I get maybe 4 minutes. So it's going to have to stay in here. So you'll have to use your imagination. So if you were to see it, you have the bees that now have a cone trap. So it's this, wall ledge, and then under the ledge is where their hole is to get into the wall. Well, I built a cone and then pretty much made it airtight between, heavy duty tape and then some foam, and then a steel mesh cone wrapped, right? So it comes out. The idea is they come out, they can't go back in. Well, some of the bees took the hint and found the hive just 2 feet over, and they're actively working now. They're calmer, so I can walk up and I can hear the difference in the hum of the bees that have taken to the new hive. They get sugar water every day, so they're not short on nectar, which you're not supposed to do in the spring unless you're doing what I'm doing, where you're transferring a colony, because they need a kind of a starter. So they're getting beautiful surf water every day. They got fresh water right outside, and they're protected between the wind, the elements, people, animals, and I, as the beekeeper, right, monitor everybody to make sure we're not having any mites, any pest issues, and I maintain the area around there to prevent any further issues. So the bees are able to then carry out their purpose in all its fullness without the stress or the hassles that other things could bring, like being in the wall, right? So they're in the right purpose, they're just in the wrong place. And for human beings, right, you are in the right place, but you are in the wrong purpose. So if you looked at me as the primary beekeeper, which I am, in both parallels. So I, as the beekeeper, am trying to get the bees, as many that'll come to the new hive, and say, look, you don't have to die, you don't have to hang off the side of the cone and, kill yourselves because you think it's the end of the world because the hive in the wall is no more an option. Well, if you were to go into the micro kingdom and you were to hear the bees story, just like if you were going to the human domain, which I'm in, and hear the human story, oh, Yahweh is this, Yahweh is that, for good, bad, or indifferent. Understanding my perspective will help you understand the things I do and why. And that's hugely important for a religious leader, because a religious leader, your purpose is to unify souls and spirits to me, the beekeeper. And then I am to adhere those spirits and those souls into the heavenly realms, to transcribe you from a biogenetic existence, which would be like the bees in the wall, and get you to go into the beehive. And it doesn't really matter how you dress it up with a story or with prophecy or with book said this or this ancient person said that, because that's the equivalent of going and being a bee and then hanging out with the bees on the wall and they're all talking shit. They're like, man, this guy comes around in a white suit. He's the devil, man. He is Satan. This guy, he has put a trap up on our house. Like, we're not giving up, man. We're fighting back. The wall has been good to us. And from that individual bee, the individual human understanding, right? I'm just the tyrant, and then everyone should be afraid of me. You should only be afraid of me if you're trying to stay in the wall. That is equivalent to working against my will. So, when I have religious leaders who are telling other bees not to listen to the beekeeper, that it's going to be better in the wall, guys. We're going through a rough patch. The wall is going to come through for us. The bee has no idea or understanding or comprehension of anything outside of its domain. A human being, as smart as you are and as articulate as you think you are and advanced, you are still very much a subprime species. And that's proven only in the eyes of the beekeeper, right? Because no matter what I do to the bees, they're either going to see me as helpful or hurtful, right? Those are really the only two things that the bee is able to perceive. Much like humans, you have what's called a duality. So every person, every human being in a biosphere, you have duality. In the realms and in heaven, duality ceases to exist, because as much as I am a separator, it is not for the negative, it is for the positive. It is peeling off the shuck of a corn to get to the good parts of the corn, right? Just like taking the bee who's in purpose but in the wrong place and trying to convince them to go into the proper place for them to not only have more space to make honey, have it easier, can do more, and they're safe. But as long as they're still going to the wall, right, as the beekeeper, I have to continue to make adjustments. And as much as it hurts me, every time a little bee is crushed, when I have to tape up another hole or I have to adjust the cone or whatever, sometimes there are casualties, and it breaks my heart, just one, but those casualties are necessary for me to do the work I need to do at that wall. And any religious leader, if you were going to be of any salt to me, right, if you're going to be of any true help to God, to me, Yahweh, Elohim, Yahuwah, then you are all like little queen bees of your own hives. So your people follow you, right? As a leader, as a religious leader, they follow you. So if you in your heart are unbelieving, right, like the bees at the wall are unbelieving that the beehive could ever be any better than the wall, even though it's only 2.5 feet away, they're so close. The bees at the wall are dying daily, right? Because now they're no longer able to get into the wall. They're sitting outside at night where the temperatures are getting cold, it's still spring, and they're faced with these challenges, right? And into the bee is only limited to what and how he can solve these issues. As the beekeeper, it's very obvious to me. It's just not obvious to the bee. So the answer really would be trust, right? If I could develop a level of trust and a level of communication with the bees, if I could turn into a bee and go bzz, 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 due to law of large numbers, I am not heard either, because it's a hive mind, right? It's where that comes from. It's a hive mind. And as the bees all push, towards like their main agenda, I don't want the music to be overpowering, so I'm trying to make sure. I seen someone kind of gripe on that one, so sorry about that. Point being was that let me try and fix this. Hold on, because I'm losing my train of thought. All right. So the point being, if a religious leader of any type, right, and at least you're in the same, call it, category, right? So if you're a Christian, right, a Jew, Judaism, because Christianity is an offshoot of Judaism. Judaism is an offshoot of worshiping the creator God, the original creator God, right? Me, Yahweh, the flesh that represents Yahweh, Elohim, Yahuwah is me. I, Yeshua, Joshua, Yahoshua. So it's not complicated, right? Humans trying to designate the white suited guy, right, who lives on that property, who only has a beehive and wall and bees in a wall, for the bees to try to say that the guy in the white suit is the neighbor. The guy in the white suit is congressman. The guy in the white suit, like, you guys look idiot. You look stupid, is what I mean. So as the beekeeper, right, and talking to all my little queen bees out there, you can either assist all the other bees in finding the beekeeper to help, transition them over, or you yourself are not a queen bee and you are a worker bee leading potential queen bees. But see, that's what I mean, right? So you have the bee who's willing to die on the hill for the wall, right? The bees on the hill willing to die for the name of Jesus. It's stupid. I've proven it to you. I'm not going to continue to beat you up over it. I'm just going to let you bees, like I'm letting them bees. You're going to find out one way or another, because guess what? A bee dies about every 21 to 23 days. To a human being, you're like, that's not a long time. It's a long time to that bee. 100 and 120 years to me for a human being ain't long at all. That, to me, is shorter than a bee's lifespan, really. So you'll find out eventually, right? Just like the bees will find out eventually that the wall is no longer the option. And the thing is, it's like, I don't want those types of bees in my new hive either, right? I don't want a stubborn bee that's going to then lead my good bees astray. Then they're going to try to swarm and then go somewhere else, and then we're going to have more dead colonies on our hands because the world is artificial. So transitioning back to the human parallel. So out of the genuine kindness of my heart, after the rebellion in heaven, after the creation of humans without a transdimensional soul, which is what I'm really trying to give you. If you want to talk science, then we'll talk science. Scientifically speaking, I'm trying to give as many good humans as I can a transdimensional soul, because that is a guarantee for me in heaven to be able to move forward with other creations that I have already created. But just like with my new beehive, it's chock full of brand new frames, 10 frames. It's got, like I say, the feeder. It's beautiful. It's a cedar wood. It's already wax coated. It's got the temperature control. There's enough in there to house, lots and lots of bees, 20,000, 40,000. So as a religious leader, if you are trying to, keep your congregations away from me, or keep the truth away from them to save face, then you're essentially a bee on the wall, right? You're holding that flag, you're yelling at the wall, you're saying screw the beehive and screw the beekeeper, and the thing is, you're gonna You're going to find out that I'm real and I am who I say I am. If anything, I swear to my own name, Yahweh Elohim Yahuwah, you will know me in death. You will. Preferably, you are on the good side. You are a bee in the beehive. You are a useful creation with a purpose, and the purpose driven by the kingdom of heaven, right? You're not the bee that keeps getting killed on my beehive, because what's happening is the wall bees, even though they're locked out, they're now trying to come to my beehive 2.5 feet away and steal honey. So now they're trying to steal my good bees. Well, what happens when you try to steal Yahweh's good bees? I'm going to walk over to that wall and I'm going to cinch the cone down more, and I'm not going to really be as gentle, because now I'm getting emotionally irritated. Why? Because I'm genuinely trying to help everybody, but when a people want to begin dividing themselves for the wrong cause, I'm going to have to continue to apply pressure in the areas that still require work. This is a teaching that's really elevated, and it may only reach 1 or 2 ears, and I hope it's the right ears, because remember, you have free will. You can choose to put your stinger up and give me the middle finger. You can choose to tell all your bees about the wall and how the wall has been good to you, right? Imagine a bee's lifetime. If they've been in that wall, we'll run some quick math. I'm not the strongest in math, but let's see. If a bee colony was in the wall for 5 years, so that's not a long time for human beings, right? 5-year-olds, they're still eating candy and getting Easter baskets. Hopefully we're just having that as a bunny holiday and not trying to incorporate, Yeshua into it. That would be Passover, and I would appreciate running Passover. That was nice. I've seen some services, but anyway, to my point. So let's say in 5 years, okay, we're going to divide that. Actually, let's do 365 days. Divide that by an average of, we'll say on the medium, 22-day lifespan of a bee. All right, so in 1 year, we have about 16 generations of bees, and that's 1 year. So now we'll times that by 5 years. That's 82 generations of bees that have been in the wall. Now we're going to make a quick note. See if I can find a pen that works. That'd be nice. There we go. Okay. So in our experiment, 5 years equals 82 generations for bees. So my point is, right, they've established through their generations that the wall is essentially, right, their salvation, right? Again, that's the Roman Catholic Church. It's the fake wall. It's what the beekeeper's not approving, because I have the real thing for you called a beehive, right? Just because the bees made a home in a wall doesn't make it a hive. It's bees in a wall. Just because humans have followed a religion for, we're going to work the math now here. Okay. So let's just say an average age of a human being is about 80 years old. Okay, let's see here. Let's just do, we'll do 4,000 years. Okay, divided by 80 years old roughly gives us 50 generations. So if we did 50 generations times an average lifespan of about 80 years, it brings us to 4,000 years. All right. So now we're going to say 4,000 years equals 50 generations, give or take. Okay? So, as the creator God, I see humanity virtually the same way as I see my bees. Okay? The human beings, and I'm overshooting by over 2,000 years on your generations. Half that, you're about 25 generations. So you're substantially younger in terms of the bee perspective, because time is irrelevant, right? A tortoise can live 200 years old, whereas a regular turtle may only live 18 years old. So, point being, 50 generations-ish, even if we went all the way to really the beginning of the epoch and doubled generations to 8,000 years, that's 100 generations. So you're still in the ballpark of the parallel of the bee. Now, just like the bee looks down upon the fly, right? The bee looks at the fly and goes, yeah, you sit on poop. We're better than you. We make honey, right? Meanwhile, the bird sits on the branch right on top of my house. We call her Little Bird. She's so cool. She's feisty. She always comes out there when I'm dealing with the bees. But just like Little Bird, right? She looks at the bees like, petty. Little bee can't do anything, right? It takes all these numbers to do stuff. Well, it's quite simple. The bees can hold on to their belief of the wall, and they're going to die inconsequentially. Whereas the bees that choose to go into the beehive, right, are going to prosper, and they're going to have a future, and they're not going to be ended at that generation, right? They're just starting. They're just starting. Now, humans, right? Well, does he love white people more than black people, or black people more than Spanish people, more than French and German and Russian? And guys, a queen bee, a drone bee, a worker bee, a reaper bee, a worker bee, it doesn't matter, right? They have 2 wings, a stinger, and then there you go, right? Some are more furry, some have a more blacker butt, some have a more yellow butt. As the beekeeper, I am concerned with the macrocosm. And the same thing goes for celebrations and festivals, right? If the bees made honey for the beekeeper, but every time the beekeeper came around, the bees are attacking the beekeeper because they made it for the wall doesn't eat honey. The beekeeper does. So if you're making honey thinking it's good, right? You're holding feast, you're doing celebrations. Well, that's fine and dandy. I don't have a qualm with that, right? I do have a qualm that, again, you don't give 2 shits less about the beekeeper, but just like the bees, right? You're doing it for the sake of the wall. I want humans to get out of the wall mindset, because if the human beings can get into my beehive, not only can I change the world, but I can change your habitat, and I can move the good bees forward. But again, that only works when some level of trust is established, like with my beehive. The ones that have made the transition over, and I didn't do it forcibly. I didn't, pick them up and dump them in my hive. No, I put out the food. I put the box in a good location, so the wise ones, right, they understand, versus the masses don't. So again, religious figures, your job is to work with your existing hive, your existing colony, and you need to find whatever meaning or whatever way you as a teacher or a preacher or a religious leader need to get the bees in line with understanding and to acquaint them with their beekeeper. And if you have a hard time explaining that God has a bad temper, when God's on earth, it doesn't look like anything that we ever thought it looks like. We have gotten it wrong, right? Because just like the bees, with all good intent, they got into that wall because of a hurricane, okay? The bees did not plan on the hurricane. It wasn't their fault that the hurricane happened. They're a casualty of the hurricane. Human beings are a casualty of my adversary who did not let a species mature. So unfortunately, in my plans, the species of human was never going to be awake or given a conscience until it has worked through its violent tendencies, until it has worked through its sexual tendencies, until it has essentially evolved under the care of me, Yahweh, to ensure its survivability. Because if we were to introduce a creation that's awake to the grand creation, which is what happened, too early, I would have a species that is the most powerful on Earth in your respects. You would have the ability to create things to kill each other. You would have an ability to spread unknown diseases that parts of the cosmos have never known. You would have an ability to do all the negative things that you do, which in the cosmos, in heaven, in the realms, we call those things sin. And, right, just like the issues that I faced as the Father in heaven with a rebellion, right, of Samael, and just when I thought everything was perfect with all of my free-willed creations in heaven, they rebelled because they thought it was time to introduce another creation, essentially for them to play with, right? They wanted to play beekeeper. I, as the Father, said, you're not ready to play beekeeper, Samael. You and Semyaza and the rest of you, right, need to keep sitting in the back seat and watch me, your Father, work through these things so they can know how to run a creation. Well, they were impatient, which is also why humanity is impatient. And just like they wanted it now, right? Inky wanted to put forth his version of human. And as a good father, I want to give my kids anything they want, as long as it's within reason. I don't ever sit back and just try and draw boundaries because I'm bored. I am the opposite. I like to push the boundaries of all things that are possible. I never sit in a human mindset of what's blocking this or that and the other. I stay in an absolute creative mindset, and I look at situations that, how can I make it better? What can I tinker with upstairs that could make these things better? My problem is, I don't do things temporarily. So frankly, I'm not going to lift a finger to help a human colony that can't even acknowledge the tendencies of the beekeeper and what the beekeeper's trying to do. Because truth be told, I'll just wait you out. I'll wait till your generation of ignorance dies and the new offspring that you have. I'm already working with infants. I'm working with 3-year-olds. Like, truth, swear on my own name. I'm working with, about 3 years ago, generations that have been assisted by my wife, Asherah, who is essentially a fertility goddess. So she helps me in the divine feminine to help enhance the birth rates. I, as Elohim, assist with the human species, the genome, and I am infusing these people that are married and having babies, I'm giving them angels. I'm directing my angels on how to keep them away from certain people, places, and things. Some situations, I'm going to have to rip children from their parents' arms. It's not fun for me, but like the bees, I am separating that. And if I have to do it when the generation of Jack Hibbs dies or James Cadis's, and all of you guys are out of my way because you're really influential and people listen to your nonsense, right? You're like the bee on the wall holding the flag, and it's, from my perspective, your nonsense. God Almighty, I'm trying to fix my earth and let creation flourish. I don't want to stifle it with BS rules. I don't want to stifle it with dogma. I don't want to stifle it with these massive cathedrals that honestly would terrify my son. Like, that's all man-made stuff. So for anybody to say that I'm evil or I'm wicked, then you don't know me. I love all things good, and I prefer to work with the creation that I'm on today. I would rather work with my birds that I work with every day. I work with my bees every day. I work with my dogs every day. I work with neighborhood cat strays every day. I work with every animal on my creation just fine, except for the human component. And I'm not going to harden my own heart anymore just because I get emotionally upset that the humans have this amazing opportunity, but they let religious dogma or their own opinions, especially the opinions of pastors, convince them otherwise. You know, because to this day, pastors will preach until they drop dead that Jesus is coming soon, the clouds will part, and then everybody who said the name Jesus gets ascended into the heavens, and that the earth is just a magic wand, and that's, I'm sorry, but that's not real. Creation takes a lot of work. I am very old. If you want to look at this, almost, I think it's funny because, you know, I'm gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm gonna explain this as if I was an alien. I'm not an alien, but I'm saying I have an amazing situation that when I'm sending the Ruach out and I'm trying to give spirits, I'm trying to secure people's spirits in heaven, give you eternal life. When I'm sending the signal, as I am the transmitter, hand over fist, my spiritualists who meditate and like call me like a frequency or call me just like this thing, they're getting the Ruach and the spirit, and they're knowing me almost backwards. These people have never seen a preacher or been in a church, but they're getting eternal life from me directly because they're a good citizen. They listen to what I say, they're meditating in spirit, and they're connecting the dots in the flesh. And for them, they're like, this is cool. Wow, all right. This God I've been meditating and praying to and all, he's real. Okay, this makes sense. It's like, hey, the actor Robert Downey Jr., he's not just on the TV. He actually has an address. He actually goes and eats, and guess what? He has to do laundry too. Like, that's what I mean. It's not this big mystic thing. I mean, 50 generations ago, everyone knew where to go and find a God. I mean, there was lots of us, but I'm saying it was like the dynamics were different. It wasn't like now. I'm saying back then, you know, people wanted to live very central to their God. That was a big part of how the hive was working at a time. But we'll take a break, and then I'll come back and I'll try to explain it from an alien perspective. So, all right, and we're back. So, as promised, I'll try to explain this from kind of a made-up perspective of, let's say I was an alien. Right? Let's say that I am from an elder race in the cosmos where planet Earth is carbon based and the planet I'm from is celestial based, stardust. So our bodies are not grown, right, like a garden, like a fruit, and we don't multiply like a fruit where one bursts the other. So given that, but also given that, let's say we're 23.6 billion years ahead of humans. So in your infancy, and again, in your infancy, one, but also being on Earth conscious, you're not supposed to be on Earth conscious yet, but it is what it is. So using that example, we've already been through the growing pains that humanity has. And just like if one of the bees from the new beehive were to go over to the wall bees and say, guys, what you're doing, it looks silly, and you're not actually doing anything worth purpose, and it's really sad. You're dying on the hill, you know, for the fictitious religions, for the fictitious name, you know, and, you know, you're worshiping other worker bees, like, you know, you should know the beekeeper, right? You should know the first voice that ever spoke into the void. It's mine. You should know the very voice that formed the first form and then began to create all things, and from a celestial point of view, right, the division is what I mean. There would actually be no duality on earth if it wasn't for essentially the original sin. What's the original sin, right? It's disobeying me. And people do it on a daily basis on earth, and the thing is, their mindset is they think they're getting away with it. It's not that you're getting away with it, it's that when you're disobeying me, you're just walking in the opposite direction. You're a wall bee. You're a bee on the wall. You're dying for a cause that's going to end up with you dead, right? And then you get to know me when I sweep you off the floor. And that's kind of what happens in your afterlife, right? Your energy goes somewhere. And for most of you, right, it's like you're going to have to be cleaned. So my point remains is, I guess I'm trying to say that if we were to strip away the religious dogma, if we were to strip away all of the fear-based assumptions that humanity wants to propagate, and instead of humans listening to other bees, I'm not a bee, I'm the beekeeper, right? I'm Yahweh Elohim Yahuwah. I'm the burning bush who spoke to Moses. And I am the same spirit, right, that descended upon Yeshua in the Sea of Galilee, and the same spirit that spoke with Yochanan, that work with Elijah, Enoch. Like, that's what I mean. I'm the same spirit. And most, if not all, the stories, right, that you guys talk about, or legends, they're translated in human ways. They make sense to human causes. They don't they don't underwrite or truly accomplish my thought, my word, and my purpose accurately. Because if I go up to if I go up to the wall right now with the bees and I do anything to it, they're only going to see it from their perspective. And then let's say the little bees had a little notepad and they're able to make notes, and they're like, oh, the beekeeper came today and he put this big scary metal cone and now we're homeless. He made us homeless. He did this, he did that, blah, 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 blah. As a human being, you would look at that and go, no, it's not silly, because, we can't have bees. We can't have bees in the wall, right? There are passerbys that walk on the sidewalk. There are children that are playing outside. And, I would really be terribly, terribly disappointed and very sad in my bees if they did that. But if anyone got injured, so we need to move them to a safer place, and then even most humans that even call me somehow wicked or evil, which I'm not, those same humans would be the ones to call an exterminator and pay $400 for the exterminator come and gas them and seal the hole. And then they'd hop right back online and finish their video about how Yahweh's a tyrant, or how that there's such a dark, mystique, complex, occult, like, you're fear-feeding, you're fear-mongers. And I'm not going to move forward with anything, frankly. If the humans begin to start coming to me and saying, Yahweh, we're ready for something positive instead of all these things negative, we're ready to actually listen to you, and we're ready to, like, start moving forward with God's agenda, as opposed to me just doing what I'm doing to the wall bees. I'm stoning. They're locked out now, and day after day, they will begin to either find their way to the new hive or they're going to die. That's the simple of it. And I don't take any pleasure in my bees dying, even just one. But as the father, I know my bees need rest. I know they need food. I know they need water. I know they need shelter. I know they need temp regulation. And, I know because one of Cameron's gifts, he's the son of Yahweh and Asherah, so he is highly supercharged in both creation. He can also change reality quite literally. But we had an interesting situation with Cameron so I'll just tell you the story. About 2 years ago, Cameron really wanted a fish tank. Okay, so we bought Cameron a fish tank. Well, we had one thing happen to one of the fish that we resurrected, but that wasn't the point of the story. The point of the story was we actually started with 2 snails. And because Cameron also possesses essentially that fertility, the divine feminine and the divine masculine embodied in one. Right? I'm the divine masculine and Asher is the divine feminine, and Cameron is both very strongly. Well, we had 2 snails turn into at least 1,000, and it's a little tank. And I mean, the growth rate, scientifically speaking, is impossible. Just like the time these wallabies, right, have had time in the wall, actually, for the amount of queens that emerge. Most beehives only have 1 queen, because just Cameron's energy, right, just like Asherah's, they have that fertility component. Cameron thinks about something like he did his fish. He had a population explosion, just like the wallabies. Cameron began thinking about it, and next thing you know, we had not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7, but we had 8 counted queens emerge from the wall. And not only that, but probably 80,000 bees with it. Now, the point I'm making there is that's Cameron's just passive energy being influenced upon the growing, thriving hive, right, in the wall, that now Daddy God has to move from the wall to a hive, and then from the hive to a secure location. So either the humans that exist today, like right now, today, you know, can either just put down their busy mind and their busy hands, honestly, do less and think more. Like, I don't really care what chapter of the Bible you're in. I really don't care what church. You know, I had a church, a Jesus is the answer place, literally the park right here. You know, these are going to be in the Bible. These videos are going to be transcribed, already transcribed into the Bible. So sorry about some of the names, but I've got to include you guys because unfortunately you're the Judases of the chapter. You're the, you know, Sauls who didn't become Pauls. Like, you guys are rotten. And that's fine, because unfortunately you are also a part of that design, because I need these examples to make. Yeah. So this, you know, the Jesus people, and that's what I mean. And it's not that, like, when I say that, like, I have malice towards you. It's not that at all. What it is I'm so sorry that your fellow humans lack spiritual understanding, and they lack the ability to teach and the ability to accurately and cordially speak on my behalf, because that's what they are. They're supposed to be spokesmen for God. They're supposed to be closest to me and understand my will, and none of you do. More people that have understood my will have been spiritualists. They've been people that have been broken, people that have had the crap kicked out of them because life has turned them away. Success turned them away. Everything turned them away, and they had one option before they killed themselves, and that was crying out to God. Whatever God, it was just God. That's the person I came down and I said, I'm here. In their heart, they heard me. In their mind, they heard me. And then I introduced myself to them. And that's the person that I lift up, and they will never leave my side, because they see the truth that mankind failed them. The government failed them. Their firearms failed them. Their militaries failed them. Their food supplies failed them. Their power supplies failed them. Their entire earth forsook them. And there was absolutely nothing but the hand of God himself to do anything about it. And that's where we're at on earth. That's where we're at. And the ball is in the human's court. If it takes you 24 hours, 24 years, or 240 years, that's all up to you guys. It's all up to you. You guys can erect Babylon because your heart wants it. You guys can put President Trump in the Oval Office because you wanted it. You guys can create military and technologies of death so sophisticated that it impresses you because that's what your heart wanted. If you wanted to serve the creator of the universe and live in a perfect world, live in a world where there's not death, there's not homelessness, there's not hunger, there isn't enslavement, there isn't unjust, there isn't unfair, there isn't good people and bad people, there's just good people. That's possible. But it's up to the human being to decide that. Because as Elohim, I cannot introduce New Earth or any new realm or any new component of your experience until we've come to that understanding. You know, it would be like if I adopted this child, right, and he's in my home now, and he wants to continue to talk crap about me, but yet I still feed him. He wants to continuously slam the door in my face when I'm the one who gave him the door in the room to begin with. He wants to continue disrespecting my wife, the one who helps the father in making his life great. You know, this adoptee is essentially how all the children of earth act towards me. And you blame me for a lot of your problems, and then you say, well, if I only did this, right, or if I only stopped the subway attack, if I only stopped October 7th. What you don't understand is I stop a lot of things all the time. I don't get a thank you. I don't get an acknowledgement. I don't get anything. And yet, on earth, I suffer. I suffer financially, and yet I'm still here trying to help. I suffer in all types of ways for a human society that could give two shits less about me. Just like when Samael did what he did, when Inky did what he did, when all these players that you guys like to build up their stories, and frankly, it's like hearing from the adopted kid what their big brother who lived in this room did wrong. And it's like, if you knew the heartbreak of every one of those children of mine, those gods were my children, and how they took my trust and broke it, how they would take my goodness and continued to do everything to see where the goodness ends and punishment begins. And unfortunately, because of your, for lack of a better terms, your big brothers and big sisters, right? The fallen angels, those ones that made you conscious, and they shouldn't have. You guys you guys are essentially just took their bad habits and are just continuing on the narrative. And that's not going to do anything, right? It'd be like the adopted kid that moved into Osiris's bedroom and was like, yeah, man, Osiris, fuck yeah, you know, he's all dark and black magic, and man, he was one of Yahweh's favorites until he fell. You know, oh, Samael, man, he was the coolest. He was, you know, he was a skater and did the backyard. Like, I'm saying, like, and you guys, like, you look up to the bad guys and you make the good guy, good God, out to be the bad one. I'm only the bad one when you're outside of the purpose, and you, none of you, not one, can even know or understand how good of a purpose is waiting for you right on the other side. So, you know, I say again, the fear component should be a fear of, I have limitless and unlimited potential to do good or bad. to work things good or to work evil. As the beekeeper, my goals are what determines what's good and what's evil. I operate off of the universal law and operate off of the council. And if you have combined wisdom and the council, there isn't even a time measuring system that could give you the amount of years in human correspondence to accurately tell you these things. Trust me. Follow the 10 Commandments. Know my face. Know my name. Know who I am. Don't try to overthink it. Don't try to follow after your big brothers with bad habits and bad behaviors. Because I assure you, one pastor, teacher, or preacher, even those that are in the circle, kind of in the circle. Really, no one's in the circle. Why is no one in the circle? Because to show an olive branch of love, respect, and genuine, cohesion towards one of my churches, I sent an email with all good intent, and then it falls on deaf ears, and then I don't even see him anymore. So that tells me you're either following after someone who's fake, who's giving you ear and eye candy, and they're using my name as something, or it was done out, you vanish out of fear, or you don't believe me. And at the end of the day, I'm here to tell you, why is belief important? Because if the bees, the few thousand bees, right, that left the wall, that did come to the beehive, they had to first believe. And see, as God, I was able to influence a couple thousand, but not 80,000. And that's where we're at. Because if a bee chooses to trust his fellow bee over the beekeeper, that bee's fate sealed. Most humans trust their teachers, their pastors, and their preachers. And when I say trust, you just mean they're not going to kill you, they're not going to rape you. I mean, unless you're Catholic, sometimes that happens. But for the most part, right, that they should be on the up and up, and that they're close to me somehow. Just because they have a steeple and they have a sign and they wear robes and they look and act religious, it doesn't mean they're close to me in any way. Most of the time, they're the furthest from me. They use my book and use it however they want. That's what magic is. Magic is being able to take something that exists and spin it for your favor. So people that accuse me of magic, I don't use magic. I'm God. I am the source of all things. I am the fabric of reality itself. And people would say, well, why don't you do this to prove it to me? Quite the opposite. I don't want to perform something that could create a false following or the wrong bees getting into my hive. Because what happens if I did that, if I did something that could convince your senses, you're not believing and trusting me with your heart. You're believing and trusting me with your flesh, and that means absolutely nothing. Which is why I say, when you understand that your flesh will die, it is just flesh, that it is a sub-existence versus heaven in the realms is a celestial existence. Eternal life is transitioning from a carbon-based body and mind into a celestial-based body and mind. And ultimate freedom is not needing a financial system. We don't have financial systems in heaven or the realms, right? It's a very primitive thing. And for the most part, financial systems, they keep honest men honest, and they give humans the ability to have more than another. Whereas in a colony, a beehive, right, or a purposeful human hive, the purpose comes above all else. Now that works when you have everyone pulling for the purpose and willing to sacrifice everyone's going to have to sacrifice something at some juncture. That's what I mean is, the problem is some people are willing to sacrifice more than others. Others are willing to sacrifice less than others. Others will not sacrifice anything. And that's when Yeshua accurately said, ye are little gods, right? You have the creative ability, you have a will, but you're not connected to the divine, and you don't have an ability to do anything after your death, right? You just die. You were born into a painting, and reality actually is in the room the painting sits in. So if I looked at it in a not Alice in Wonder, but if I just looked at it in like a creative type of parable or explanation, Earth is a creation, right? You are a sculpture, a painting that I made, but reality is outside of the painting. It isn't static. The painting is only as static as I want to make it. And I want nothing but the pure honey, because that's what's allowed in the realms in heaven. That's what continues to keep us up there, where it's strictly good and nothing bad. That's why I had to send Samael and Semyaza and the 200 down to earth when I did, because if I chose to be ever loving and enduring, then I would have just had an earthly mess in heaven. That would have amplified the situation more. Last one, and then we'll conclude. If people actually, we'll do this, because right now a big problem is with deportation. People are in this uprising, in this outcry, If the person never came to a country illegally, therefore no crime was committed. The person never came over. Hence, the person comes over, a crime was committed. If that person was the best father in the world, he still committed a crime. Now, equal to that, before my spirit matured, right, I got a DUI. Well, it don't matter if I move to any state. I can't have a driver's license until I get a little blow and go. It doesn't matter that my flesh was just the flesh of God, but the mind of God did not enter it until I was 30 years old. The DMV courts don't understand that. They don't care. They're like, well, we don't care. Joshua, Yahuwah, or Yahweh, whatever you call yourself, we don't give a shit. We want to see a breathalyzer for 6 months, and we want all this money. So guess what? It's no license for Yah. It's not fair, but it is what it is. Just like when I say the human being was never supposed to exist in this state at this young of an age. Your species did not have time to mature because the fallen angels got hasty and they thought they knew more than me. And even then, believe this or not, right, even in the realms and in heaven, the angels and the hierarchies and the luminaries and the councils and all that, right, they highly respect me, and you don't have any issues in those regards, right? In that situation, right, I am the queen bee or the king bee. But my personal family, right, my personal family being the gods of the past, those were my sons of God, gods that came from heaven to earth. We were going to be doing this project my way originally, and then it became corrupted because they thought that they knew more than me. They thought they could do it better than me, just like human beings do it now. You think you're smarter than me, you think you're more handsome than me, which is fine. And you know what? In so many ways, right? Because the bee knows how to make honey better than I do. That's true. A human being might be able to build a car, build a home, write a poem, build a boat. Absolutely. You are craftsmen. The works of your hands are impressive. But that means nothing when we're talking about this being in the celestial realms. All those things exist, right? But just like the wall and the beehive, there's the right way and the wrong way. And right now, 100%, 110%, everything on earth is the wrong way. So how are you, stuck in the middle of the wrong painting, going to be able to get out of it? The only way out of it is through me. I am the way, I am the truth, I am the light. I am the way out of the painting. I am the truth of reality in which I tell you, because it is I who created it. I'm the founder, right? You like Washington so much? I'm like the Washington of existence. And the life, because if I can get the bee over to the beehive and out of the wall, the bee gets to see paradise. And if I can get the human to love me, the creator, with all their heart, then I'll be able to give that eternal spirit and move them also into the beehive. And there you go. So, have a good day, and I don't know when the next video will be, and again, there may never be a next video. I really don't know, because humanity has to want it for it to work. Humanity has to want to believe, because when you want to believe and then you do with your heart, and then the Spirit convicts you of that belief. And that's how you go from being a Saul to a Paul. That's how you go from loving Jesus to loving God, Yahweh, Yeshua, Yahuwah, Yehoshua, Yeshua, however you want to put it, me. Come out of your cage and into the open, and do it fearlessly. For I, the Lord your God, am with you wherever you go. But don't forsake me, because if you, I'm kind of sensitive. Honestly, if my feelings get hurt or I get bashed or unrecognized, it hurts. It hurts my feelings a lot. It's like working with the bees and then getting a sting, and then it's like, oh, like now I'm in pain, now I'm frustrated, and now I don't want to do anything nice. Now I still got to tape this thing, but now I don't really care who it crushes. Now I got to do this. So that's why it's so important to build a relationship, because no one ever understood, why I'm against idols, because they don't have a mind, they don't have eyes, they don't have a nose, they don't have a mouth. Idols can't talk back to you. Idols are a one-way road to appease human beings. Your popes are idols. Your religious figures are idols. Jesus is an idol, right? What Yeshua stood for was the principalities and the purpose of the heavens and of the realms. When I possessed his flesh as Yahweh Elohim Yahuwah, humans could never accept that at that time, because before then, Yeshua was a bit of a lush, just like this Joshua was also a bit of a lush, right? You could even go so far as saying a full-on drunk before the Spirit entered Yeshua back then and now. The behavior of Yeshua, right, before the meeting of the Spirit wasn't necessarily the greatest. How then could a pure Pharisee ever see such a troubled young man and say he was in fact God on earth? See, the Pharisee could never do that. Yeshua was a shadow of himself until he was also about 29 or 30. Just like I myself was conscious of knowing who I was, but unable to physically, essentially see myself in the mirror with acceptance yet. These are things that humans are going to have to either get over, right, to move forward with. And, you know, look at that as the beekeeper didn't step over towards the bee. And remember, in bee time, 20 days. But imagine it took me, the beekeeper, about 50 days to come up with an accurate plan to get the bees off the wall and into the hive, to actually order the hive, to then build the hive, and then gather all the things I'm going to need for the new bees. See, in the bees' time domain, that's 3 or 4 generations ago. Maybe more. And the same thing with humans. I had to go upstairs and do this and do that and do the other. I tried to give you things that you would know me by, that only I can do. Signs, miracles, and not, and again, this is what I mean, you know, not movie magic, not Chris Angel, right? Not Mr. Beast. Like, that's what I mean. That's lying signs and wonders. That's watching Iron Man fly when Iron Man really can't fly. So, like I said, you come to me when you're ready. And when you're ready, I'll be waiting. Good luck, everybody.